Today's album review is Linkin Park's One More Light, the last album that they released with Chester, and perhaps one of the least well received at the time of its release. And I was picking at some of the songs lately, and I thought, let's just do the entire thing. I actually never heard the entire album, bar a song or two here and there. So I'm going to this somewhat blind, but let's see what the album has in store for us. So the first song, I can already tell that the album is definitely way like poppier than the other albums that they've put out before. It is, however, like different, and I like different, obviously. It still has that somewhat signature Linkin Park flair, however, and from my understanding, because I went and read a little bit about this is an album that was put together by the members sharing like their struggles about life and something more personal about themselves. So the meaning of it is actually quite nice. Right, it's actually interesting to see how actually upbeat some of the songs actually are, considering especially a lot of the lyrics and the subject matter. Then we have Good Goodbye, which actually had two rap features, and honestly, they were not very enjoyable. Like, I liked Chester singing way more in that song than the features, and it's kind of a letdown because Mike Shinoda already raps for the band, right? I mean, sure, he does production and all of that stuff, he knows how to play guitar, whatever, sure, but usually in the songs, it is the rapper, right? So I think it simply would have way more synergy with Chester, way more chemistry. So I honestly don't understand why they decided to do the features, because the features, in my opinion, just detracted from not just the Linkin Park flair, but also the poppy flair that the album was going for. Like, this was definitely one of the weakest, if not the weakest song in the album for me. But I do like that the entire album was way more like experimental in its sound, at least for Linkin Park. Since the members, I guess, wanted to do something more, I guess, personal, a lot of the album is also way more toned down compared to previous albums to go alongside it. This album definitely does not have that, punch that usually Linkin Park songs or Linkin Park albums tend to have, and even the sound is way more tame, comparatively speaking, even to other, like, I guess, popular albums. Like, when A Thousand Suns came out, people were like, oh, this album is all Linkin Park, whatever, but even that album has a lot of, like, punch to it, maybe they wanted to create some space between the album and themselves due to the subject matter, or since, it was more personal, they wanted to try and just do something completely different, and try and like signal that. In a way, some of these songs actually sound more like an homage to other bands and singers than they sound like Linkin Park. At least, like from the first, second, third song, especially the third song, because the Talking to Myself, it's the third song. It sounds like a very poppy rock band, like a sort of a Maroon 5 or a whatever other pop rock band. I don't know many, but it definitely does sound like way more. So if it wasn't for Chester, I would bet that you would listen to Talking to Myself and you'd be like, oh yeah, this is not a Linkin Park song, and it is, right? So it is definitely way more stripped down when it comes to Linkin Park, I guess the thing that I do appreciate about all of them is definitely the lyrics, because I think that the lyrics are still very Linkin Park, even if they are maybe a bit more poppy and not so much like, I guess, rock, as they were in the earlier albums. They're definitely still very nice, and I think that's always a strong point. That's a point that a lot of people don't actually talk about when it comes to Linkin Park. It's the lyrics. I think Linkin Park lyrics are actually very strong. They're definitely one of the strong points of the band, but I think everyone just talks about Chester's voice and the production on the albums and, how good Mike Shinoda is at rapping, or whatever, but I think that the lyrics are actually really fucking nice. I think they're a very good point, a very strong point of Linkin Park's identity. And the best thing is they're very approachable, they're good, but they're also approachable. You don't need a fucking PhD in literature to understand them, right? So something else that I've noticed is that a lot of the production seems to be inspired by EDM sound types, which is, it was very present in pop music in the early and late 2010s, especially because a lot of EDM, especially trap, was becoming super popular at that point. Dubstep had gone through a golden era that, sort of divided the dubstep into brostep as well. So definitely there is a lot of that inspiration in the tracks. You can really really see that inspiration, which I guess is nothing new for Linkin Park, because they were always in a way ahead of the curve in that regard, but definitely, this is not their signature sound whatsoever. I must say that, again, the lyrics are actually really nice, pretty much ever since talking to myself, the lyrics, in my opinion, just get stronger as the album goes on, especially in later songs in the album, especially, regardless of how tame the production or the album actually is, right? I think the lyrics are probably the best part of this entire project. I think that this entire album, the best thing are by far the lyrics, especially because you do have different registries of them, because a lot of the lyrics still feel like Linkin Park, but because you have these different sound compositions and productions, because every song sounds like a different take on pop music. You also have a lot of different registries when it comes to the lyrics, so that was actually really nice. Now, this is where we start, in my opinion, getting into the good part of the album, which is Battle Symphony, I think it's called, which is the fourth song in the album. To me, and from what I've seen, honestly, it's a very underrated song. I think it goes under the radar of a lot of people, and I do think that it's honestly very, very nice, catchy song. It's a bit weird that it is a feel-good song in a way, from a sound perspective, but then the lyrics are kind of more down, I guess. So, you do have that. In that regard, I think Linkin Park is still very Linkin Park. And then we actually go into Invisible, which I found very interesting, because it's not Chester singing, it's Mike, right? This song is actually a lot more punchy than a lot of other songs, and to me it's another gem in the entire album. And Heavy is the next song in the album. It's the sixth song in the album, and it was the single that was actually released to promote the album, and this song got absolutely flamed to oblivion from what I remember. People really fucking hated this song when it came to Linkin Park, right? Personally, I honestly think this is one of the strongest songs in the album. It feels a lot more punchy than the rest, and the mix between this sort of happy and, sad sound is actually pretty much the typical Linkin Park, right? Which is kind of weird why this song got criticized. I get criticizing a lot of the other songs in the album, right? Especially for being poppier, sure. But this is while it is a bit tame, it is typical Linkin Park. This is what you expect out of any Linkin Park record, right? Again, it's a bit more tame, especially considering their, more rock days and whatnot. But this is typical Linkin Park, so I actually love the song. I love the dynamic between Chester and Kiara, as well as the lyrics. Again, super fucking relatable, and the lyrics, to me, the lyrics just scream Linkin Park, right? Especially in this song, the lyrics scream Linkin Park. I just wish that perhaps the song was a little bit longer, because it does feel like it ends a little bit abruptly, but otherwise, and easily one of my favorites, and it's understandably why it was released to promote the album. And then we actually go into Sorry For Now, as yet again we have Mike singing as we did in Invisible. So this is not the first time this thing is happening. However, in this song you also have the added Chester rapping, right? I know that Chester can rap, I know that Mike can sing, but still it's very surprising, which to me just, means that yeah, this was definitely way more experimental for the band. They really left their comfort zone, and yeah, a lot of the compositions are, typical late 2010s pop songs with those EDM inspired, especially, drops that can't go too hard because it's a pop song, not an EDM song, right? All in all, it's actually a really nice song. This album definitely started kind of slow in my opinion, and a lot of the earlier songs do sound far more poppy in the sense of, they sound like Linkin Park trying to be poppy rather than the rest of the album, which is LP, basically just being LP, right? But, sort of giving a pop perspective to their sound. So it still sounds poppy, but it sounds poppy from a Linkin Park perspective, as opposed to the first few songs, which just sounds Linkin Park trying to be poppy, right? It's like being poppy first, Linkin Park second, where the rest of the album is more Linkin Park first and being poppy second, right? I think if you took the first three songs away, while yes, it's still a very pop and definitely a very experimental album for Linkin Park standard, it is definitely a much stronger album. And while the songs are poppy, they are all types of and different kinds of poppy that were popular at this time, which just contributes to that sort of experimental nature that they had going on. And then we go to One More Light, probably one of the most well-known songs of the album and of Linkin Park in general, right? And there's a reason for that. Chester's singing is incredibly powerful, and then you have a lone guitar in the background alongside with a elongated. They sounded to me like piano notes that has just been, digitally elongated pretty much forever, so they kind of looped, right? Which establish a really nice atmosphere, and it just eats you right in the feels. Like, this is what I mean when I say that Linkin Park albums are usually punchy, right? They're not necessarily punchy in the sense of like the song sounding heavy. They just punch you in the sense of like they really like mess with you, you know what I mean? Like they really engage you, you know? And this one just punches you right in the feels, and again, the lyrics are so fucking good. It's by far one of the most impactful and beautiful that I've heard, even for Linkin Park standards, like a lot of the emo and stuff like that, relatable lyrics, but One More Light really does a very good job, especially because they are relatable, not from a, emo, sad teenager, but more from a actual, very intimate, depressive perspective. It's very from the inside, I guess, if you could say, right? Look, I think this is, it's very easy to understand why this is easily the biggest song in the album, right? And it's even appreciated by those who didn't exactly love the album when it came out. This is the song I keep coming back to, and it's the song that I will always probably keep coming back to because it's a song that manages to keep me company. A lot of Linkin Park songs do that, and this one is honestly no exception. Over the years, this song has definitely climbed how important it is in my life, and Chester's voice and the expression of his emotion just has so much space to breathe because you barely have any instrumentals going on, right? So it's pretty much just his voice, and here you actually see how important Chester's vocals actually were to the songs and how hard of a task Linkin Park actually had to replace Chester, because the reality is finding someone, a vocalist, a singer that was able to barely have any instruments going on and creating an entire emotion by just singing a few lyrics without belting, without screaming, without anything is honestly very fucking hard, because that's the thing. To me, what really, really makes this song is Chester, easily. His singing was unique, not because his voice was unique, or not because, no one else could do it or whatever, but because when it came to expressing emotion in songs, he adds that little spice on top of everything that just feels so much more authentic, right? And to me, that just really makes this song, and it makes this song incredibly impactful. The album definitely could have ended with that, but instead it ends on Sharp Edges, which is the song that is next. While obviously not as strong as One More Light, it did have this sort of indie vibe to it, which also, makes it a very good closure for the album, and a sort of decent follow-up to the previous song. Obviously, you can't end an album in such a very heavy emotionally song, so I understand why they didn't want to close the album with One More Light. All in all, it's definitely not my favorite Linkin Park album, and honestly, I'm still not too fond of it. With that being said, however, I definitely do have a newfound respect for it and totally understand where they were coming from. Even if it didn't connect with me as much as perhaps some of their especially older stuff, even then, as much of a big departure as it is from their original sound, I always appreciate artists following a certain vision, even if the vision falls on the outside of what they have been doing up until that point. I think that in creating art, There are no wrong steps you take, and while many might perceive it like that when it comes to especially this album, I would have to disagree. I'm sure that having the freedom to do this and experiment was really appreciated by the band members, even if tragically Chester would pass away shortly after. In a way, it's nice to know that the last album he sang on, despite the lyrics, the album actually did sound much happier. In a way, it was a happy note to the fans, you know? They might say that there are no happy endings, but at least the fans do have something to keep them company. As for my vibe meter, however, I'm feeling a 6 out of 10, although I would say that's simply because I grew up listening to Linkin Park, and so I'm much more closer and, much more engaged with some of their older works. However, with that being said, again, this album could have easily been a 2-3 out of 10 with, oh yeah, Only One More Light is the good song or whatever, but I was actually very pleasantly surprised. Again, the score doesn't mean too much, it's just what I'm vibing at the moment.